Our company Gastra bears the mission to deliver quality care for patients at affordable prices. Over the past 10 years, we have been stronger and more competitive by consistently pumping out highest quality generics in the growing market. I'm Cynthia, the head of gastrointestinal generics. This fall, my team and I hope to introduce you our ideas and plans on developing the generic version of Nexium 40 mg capsule, Esoma, in a market full of opportunities and potentials. Here is the outline of our presentation today, and let me start off by briefly introducing the branded product, Nexium 40 mg capsule. It is derived from omeprazole, the racemic mixture, which contains the active form of esomeprazole and another inactive enantiomer. It is first launched by AstraZeneca as Losec in 1989. Nexium, which composes of only esomeprazole, is then launched in the US in 2001. It is a very effective PPI which substantially inhibits the gastric secretion. However, in Hong Kong, only the tablet but not the capsule form is available. They share the common API and the legal classification, but vary greatly in terms of the dosage form. While the one in US is a delayed-release capsule with enteric-coated granules inside. The one in Hong Kong is only a gastro-resistant tablet. This leads to a difference in the route of administration. The capsule can be administered via a nasal gastric tube, while the tablet via a gastric tube. For the master formula of Nexium 40 mg capsule, the API is esomeprazole magnesium trihydrate at 44.5 mg. The most important excipients are highlighted in pink, which is the sustained or extended release matrices, and in orange, which is the enteric coat. Methacrylic acid copolymer type C is used as the enteric coating, as it's insoluble in the gastric media, but soluble in the small intestine. For the capsule shell, various coloring agents and solvents are also used. There are 4 major indications for Nexium 40 mg capsule. Firstly, for GERD, FDA, NICE guidelines, and MIMS all supported a once-daily use for at least 4 weeks. For H. pylori eradication, only the FDA and MIMS recommend a 10-day triple therapy at a once-daily dosing for esomeprazole 40 mg. For the risk reduction of NSAID-induced stomach ulcers, both FDA and MIMS recommend a 40 mg once daily. Finally, for Zollinger-Ellison syndrome, both FDA and MIMS recommend a 40 mg twice daily. Last but not least, esomeprazole is a special drug in the HA drug formulary. From the operation guideline, it can only be provided by HA when it's prescribed by a specialist, or when the H2 antagonists are ineffective for a long time. For those who fail to meet these criteria but require esomeprazole, they can purchase them directly from the community pharmacies with a HA prescription, as a self-financed item with some HA discounts. Now, let's pass the time to my teammate, Shirley.
Next, we'll talk about the business potential of Esoma with SWOT analysis. Here's the outline for strength. Esoma exhibits clinical superiority, that's why it should be used as the agent of choice for acid suppression. In the treatment of GERD, there was a significant difference in favor of esomeprazole when esomeprazole 40 mg was compared to omeprazole 20 mg. Every 10 patients treated with esomeprazole, 1 additional patient would be symptom-free at 4 weeks. Resolution of symptoms at 8 weeks, which means the healing rate of gastritis, was also shown to be higher in the esomeprazole group. As for comparison with other proton pump inhibitors, efficacy of esomeprazole is considered equivalent to lansoprazole 30 mg, and both are significantly more effective than H2 receptor antagonists. One trial demonstrated a higher 8-week healing rate for esomeprazole 40 mg compared to pantoprazole 40 mg. Although there has not been head-to-head comparison between 40 mg esomeprazole and omeprazole on symptom control, esomeprazole undergoes less first-pass metabolism by the liver than the racemic mixture, which is omeprazole. This allows esomeprazoles to achieve a higher serum concentration and a larger bioavailability than those equivalent omeprazole with subsequent higher gastric pH for a longer period of time. On the topic of metabolism, around 15 to 20% of Asians lack CYP2C19, which is an enzyme to metabolize omeprazole and its isomers. However, esomeprazole's metabolism is affected to a much lesser extent, making its effect more predictable and safer to use. In terms of drug interaction, both esomeprazole and omeprazole are CYP2C19 and 3A4 substrate, and both interact with 2C19 inhibitors. But as you can see, only omeprazole interacts with 3A4 substrates. Furthermore, higher dose capsule at 40 mg allows for more rapid relief of symptoms due to larger bioavailability and stronger acid suppression. Secondly, its formulation also makes it an ideal product for hospital use. It is an important advantage to be illustrated when competing for HA tender. Currently, both esomeprazole tablet or capsule is not in the HA drug list. Both of them are suitable for patients with swallowing difficulty or who cannot swallow. Simply open the capsule and mix the pellets in half a glass of non-carbonated water. Then the mixture can be swallowed or administered through a tube. Compared to tablet, no on-site crushing is required, and compared to injection, the establishment of IV line is not required, making it a convenient choice for the specific group of patients. Last but not least, Esoma constitute ideal treatment regimens for various diseases. For GERD, it is more evidence-based as it is the only high-dose PPI with labeled indication with omeprazole. It also allows better compliance as it is only dosed once a day, and it allows a smaller pill burden for triple therapy for eradication of H. pylori.
Thank you, Shirley. While esomeprazole has lots of strengths, there are also some inevitable weaknesses. Firstly, the chiral switch of esomeprazole will increase the treatment cost. For the branded one, the price will substantially increase to $43, while for the generic one, the price will also slightly increase to $14.2. Also, there are also more accessible alternatives available. For example, when the patient's GERD symptoms arise, the patient is likely to visit LSP first due to its closer distance to home, its greater availability, as well as longer opening hours. In the LSP where there is no healthcare professionals, OTC such as antacid will be provided. Even if it's very cheap at the price of around $50, it can only temporarily neutralize the excess acid and has a very short duration of action, implying a repeat dosing. H2 antagonists such as famotidine will also be provided. Even if it's very cheap and it partially suppresses the gastric acid secretion, it's actually less effective for the inhibition of stimuli-induced acid secretion, and it's not always effective for GERD. Finally, tolerance may also develop. Since taking these OTC medications may not resolve the GERD symptoms, the patient may seek for more effective medications in local pharmacies, such as the ASP. In the ASP where the pharmacist is present, Part 1 only poison can be provided, such as pantoprazole. Its advantage is that it suppresses all of the gastric acid secretion. However, it actually fails to achieve the same efficacy as Nexium 40 mg. Also, it's very expensive. Omeprazole can also be provided as a smaller pack size of 14 tablets. However, it also fails to achieve the same efficacy as Nexium 40 mg, and there is only a 20 mg dosage form available. Finally, it's also very expensive. Since these Part 1 poison are more effective, GERD symptoms may temporarily subside. This means that the patient may incorrectly perceive that he does not require any doctor's advice in the clinic. This would lead to underdiagnosis, therefore the low prescription rate of esomeprazole. Finally, the last weakness of esomeprazole is that the doctor's prescribing habits and their unfamiliarity with newer PPIs. These are the older PPIs that are more well known, while esomeprazole and lansoprazole are the newer ones. Among all, omeprazole and pantoprazole are the most commonly prescribed.
Thank you, Cynthia. When bringing Esoma into the market, we actually see a lot of opportunities for us to be profiteering. From AstraZeneca's report in 2018, you can see that global Nexium sales follow a decreasing trend. However, Nexium is continuing to perform strongly in China following additional approvals for high-dose treatment of peptic ulcer disease. Among total product sales in emerging markets, Chinese market's growth accounted for 28%, while the rest of the emerging markets, including Hong Kong, is actually suffering from a loss in revenue. It proves that generic competition really takes a toll on Nexium sales worldwide, including Hong Kong. So this is our window of opportunity. Looking back at Hong Kong's market, the total number of patients based on indications are actually quite high. The number of patients for each indications are calculated by finding out the disease's prevalence and multiplying it by Hong Kong's population. The positioning of Esoma in each indication is then decided based on the number of patients. Our main target would be patients with GERD and H. pylori infection. For GERD, we expect to utilize Esoma in 4 groups of patients. The first group is those who are tolerant to H2 receptor antagonists. Since their esophagus might be desensitized to acid, Using H2RA potentially provides symptomatic relief without decreasing esophageal acid exposure. When patient is refractory to daily lansoprazole use, the efficacy of switching to daily esomeprazole equals to that of twice daily lansoprazole. So Esoma can lessen the pill burden while controlling symptoms. Esoma can also be used in patients with severe and frequent symptoms. As for Zollinger-Ellison syndrome, there is a limited amount of patients even though Esoma is used as a high-dose PPI for long-term use. Long-term PPI usage might actually delay Zollinger-Ellison syndrome diagnosis due to masking of peptic symptoms. That's why we require other diagnostic criteria such as gastrin level in the serum to boost the diagnostic rate. For H. pylori, there is a high prevalence among Chinese population. However, it is often underdiagnosed as patients with uncomplicated peptic ulcer are less likely to undergo endoscopy. In this group of patients, Esoma can actually be employed as a cheaper and stronger agent of choice among other PPIs. So who are our targeted buyers? In the private sector, we aim to sell Esoma to general practitioners and community pharmacy. GPs actually prefer prescribing generic instead of branded if the patient has no preference or request. Since both of them are of the same medication and doctors charge the same consultation price, but the cost of the branded version is way higher than the generic for the doctor, they will prescribe generic version to decrease cost and maximize profit margin. When more GPs are prescribing generics and more patients are aware of the cheaper alternative, it creates derived demand for generic esomeprazole in the community pharmacy. Having said that, Esoma still faces a lot of threats when entering the market. There are many existing competitors even before Nexium was off-patent in the US market. Omeprazole has always been the top prescribed PPI, followed by pantoprazole, and Nexium is only ranked third. After generic entry, the market is highly fragmented and competitive. Existing generic products already occupy the majority of the market. It is very difficult to seize market share by just low price. And in the local market, you can see an increasing number of generic esomeprazole 40 mg in Hong Kong, no matter in capsule form or in tablet form. And the number of tablet is higher than the number of capsule. Still, it shows that Esoma is facing keen competition in the market.
I will now talk about the manufacturing process of Esoma, the equipment involved, and possible incorporation of continuous manufacturing and process analytical technologies. The product is a delayed release capsule containing enteric coated granules, and the granule structure consists of an inert core, which is a sugar sphere, that is covered by the drug layer containing the API esomeprazole magnesium trihydrate. It is then covered by a swelling layer and finally covered by an enteric coating. For the coating process, HPMC is first dissolved in water, and polysorbate AT and the API are then added to the solution. This coating solution, which forms the drug layer, is sprayed onto the sugar spheres in a fluidized bed. For the swelling layer, a suspension of hydroxypropylcellulose and talc is sprayed onto the granules in a Worcester-equipped fluid bed. And for the enteric coating layer, a dispersion of polysorbate AT, glycerol monostearate, triethyl citrate, and eudragit are similarly coated on the granules in a Worcester-equipped fluidized bed. A Worcester-equipped fluidized bed is used for the coating processes of the granules in a product, other than aiming to mimic the manufacturing process of Nexium, which uses this equipment. It has an advantage of producing a very uniform coating. Here is the overview of the steps involved in the manufacturing process. So starting with the first coating process, the solution of the drug layer is processed through a high shear mixer, then introduced to the Worcester-equipped fluid bed to coat the sugar spheres. The subsequent coating processes are similarly carried out, and there is a sieving step of the swelling layer coated granules using a vibrating screen. The lubricant magnesium stearate is added to the enteric coated granules before they enter the capsule filling machine, and the completed capsules are then packaged into blister packets using a blister packaging machine with a PVC forming film and aluminium lidding material. And the blister packets are introduced to a cartoning machine for final packaging and labeling. So why could we potentially consider continuous manufacturing, CPM? CPM is considered by regulators such as the US FDA as a means to improving product quality and considered one of the major tools in modernization of the pharmaceutical industry. So it is estimated that CPM can reduce costs of manufacturing by up to 50%, such as by reducing costs of efficiency optimization and hold time studies which are carried out in traditional batch manufacturing. Challenges of implementing CPM include a lack of regulation and measures to ensure alignment with GMP and ICH guidelines. The FDA, however, has a draft guidance for the industry on continuous manufacturing, which can serve as an initial framework for the industry. Investment in equipment like PAT and automation software is an initial drawback to CPM. However, it may be outweighed by the increased manufacturing efficiency and decreased costs in the long run. A Wurster fluidized bed can be adapted for continuous manufacturing. The coating solution is administered through a LDP pump and subsequently sprayed from the bottom of the chamber using a two-component nozzle. The continuous discharge of coated product from the fluidized bed is achieved by a pneumatic external separation tube. And how this works is that the thickness of the coating layer is controlled by the velocity of the air introduced into the separation tube, where fine particles are transported back into the coating chamber and coarse particles of the desired size are collected. To control the feeding rates into and discharge rates out of the fluidized bed, sluices are employed. Each sluice consists of two throttle valves, which are asynchronously operated, which means when one is open, the other closes. And so the flow rate of the particles is controlled by the switching frequency of these valves. Another method to control the feeding rate of nuclei into the fluid bed is by using a gravimetric feeder. It provides real-time feedback, which is ideal for CPM. The controlling system of this apparatus adjusts the feeder speed to produce a rate of weight loss in the hopper equal to the desired feed rate set point. The metering speed can also be automatically adjusted to account for changes in the density of the material fed into the hopper. And finally, process analytical technologies, PAT, play a key role in continuous manufacturing and is a system where real-time measurements of in-process materials and also processes are used to ensure quality of the final product. Examples of PAT include Raman spectroscopy, which can be implemented for identifying polymorphism and purity of the API, as well as homogeneity of suspensions for coating granules. Focus beam reflectance measurement, FBRM, and particle vision and measurement, PVM, can measure particle size and count of granules in a fluid bed processor. Furthermore, near-infrared spectroscopy's applicable functions include API identification, such as polymorphism and drug content, as well as mixing homogeneity and endpoint determination during the coating processes.
I'll now talk about the finished product specifications. The first test is uniformity of weight. The amounts of content of 20 randomly selected capsules are measured by calculating the mass difference between the intact and empty capsules. Not more than 2 capsules can have a content deviating from the average mass of the capsules by over 7.5%, and none should deviate by more than 15%. For uniformity of content, an assay is done on 10 capsules. If not more than 1 capsule content is outside the limit of 85 to 115% and none is outside 75 to 125%, the product passed. If 2 to 3 capsules are outside 85 to 115% and none is outside 75 to 125%, another 20 capsules should be tested. If not more than 3 of the 30 capsules are outside 85 to 115% and none is outside 75 to 125%, the product also passed. Otherwise, the product fails. For uniformity of dosage units, the content uniformity test should be done. Firstly, 10 capsules are assayed and the acceptance value is calculated using this equation. If the acceptance value is not more than 15%, the product passed. If not, 20 more capsules should be tested, and the product passed if the overall acceptance value does not exceed 15% and no capsule content exceeds the limit of 0.75 to 1.25 m. There are 2 alternatives for a content uniformity test when large sample size is used. This can be used with the process analytical technology.
The first option is to calculate the acceptance value, which should not exceed 15%. Also, the number of capsules having a content outside the specified range should not exceed C2 on the table. Another option is to find out the individual capsule contents and compare the number of capsules outside the specified range to the requirements on the table. As for the solution test, put the capsule into hydrochloric acid and run the apparatus for 2 hours. Then withdraw a sample for analysis. Proceed to the buffer stage by adding trisodium phosphate dodecahydrate to the setup and adjust to pH 6.8. Run the test for another 45 minutes and withdraw a sample for analysis. Another method completes the exit stage in 1000 ml of hydrochloric acid. When proceeding to the buffer stage, the first option is to drain the acid out and replace with phosphate buffer. Starting from stage 1 with 6 capsules, the product complies with the test only if the quantities of esomeprazole dissolved in both stages conform to the conditions shown. If stage 1 failed, proceed to later stage by testing more capsules. As the solution test is needed for our product, this integration test is not required. According to the USP, impurities should be measured. Sample solution is prepared by adding powdered granules, methanol, and diluent to a volumetric flask, then add water to 200 ml. After filtering, analyze using liquid chromatography and calculate the result using this equation. Lastly, compare the result to this table. The bioequivalence test is required for HA entry. This is done by comparing the Cmax and area under curve in the PK profile of our product to the brand drug. The product complies with this test if the following acceptance criteria are met.
Now I'll talk about the cost analysis of Esoma. This is a quick recap of the substantial amount of excipients in Nexium 40 mg capsule in both inside and on the outside. For Esoma, the API is added at each step of the coating process. The prices of all excipients are quoted from Alibaba. Based on our estimated mass of excipients per capsule, we calculated the price of excipients per batch at the batch size of 100,000. The excipients used on the outer capsule shell significantly decreases in Esoma because we outsource the capsule shell. This substantially decreases the cost to only hard gelatin shell for the capsule section. Thus, the total cost of our API and excipients are $10,225.60 per batch. In addition to the raw material cost, there are also manufacturing and testing costs, including the equipments like feeder, mixer, and coater. One senior technician will be hired to oversee the manufacturing process of Esoma. The packaging, marketing, and regulatory costs per batch are also taken into account. R&D costs associated with Esoma production are much lower than Nexium, as no preclinical studies or clinical trials on those findings, safety, and efficacy are required. Adding these cost components, our total cost will be $375,687.82 per batch. Despite a total of 14 generics, as previously mentioned by Shirley, in most community pharmacies, the only esomeprazole available are Nexium and esomeprazole Sandoz, which are the two main competitors of Esoma. The price of Sandoz is much lower than Nexium, even if after HA's SFI discount. This would be part of our consideration in the pricing strategy.
After analyzing the cost, we will now discuss the marketing plan. In light of the treatment regimen per week, our packaging is designed in this way. One box of Esoma contains 14 delayed-release esomeprazole capsules, and they are contained in an aluminum backing strip. As for the product name, ESO comes from esomeprazole and Ma comes from magnesium, while Yixiumei symbolizes the resolution of GERD and ending of all gastric symptoms. In terms of the design, the cool base tone of the box provides comfort, and the purple highlighting of 40 mg emphasizes Esoma as a high-dose PPI. At the back of the box, legally required labeling of prescription drug and manufacturer's address were included. We also provided some essential information for consumers to guide correct Esoma use, for instance regarding the method of administration and storage condition. And this is the look of our product. Concerning pricing strategy, we have the following rules. Our price should be lower than brand Nexium 40 mg tablet and generic Sandoz 40 mg tablet. We also aim the profit margin at 100% as our cost is sufficiently low. Lastly, Price difference with Nexium should be adequate to attract patients. When Prilosec omeprazole went off patent, its price dropped by 97%. In order to seize Nexium users, we achieved a price drop of 82.5%. Dividing the cost per batch by the batch size, the cost of each capsule was found at $3.76. To attain a 100% profit margin, the price sold to ASSP, doctors, and hospital is at $7.52, which is way lower than existing products. Please note that wholesale price has not considered retailers' markup, and the cost was the lowest estimated cost, so further increment in price is possible.
For the sales and education channel, our target populations will be the public sector, private sector, and customers. In the hospital, seminar and posters will be used. Firstly, to increase the diagnostic rate of ZES. This can be achieved by increasing its awareness and educating the doctors on the differential diagnosis. Also, we can also educate the doctors on the clinical superiority of esomeprazole. For example, esomeprazole targets Asians with a higher likelihood of CYP2C19 variation. Also, it has a high-dose formulation and a once-daily dosing. In the hospital and pharmacy, we can give out pens that can increase the exposure of Esoma, and pens are also stationary of all HCPs. This can increase the prescribing rate of Esoma in doctors by strengthening their memory and creating a phenomenon that Esoma is commonly prescribed, gradually changing their prescribing habits. Also, community pharmacists will also then encourage the patients to switch from Nexium to Esoma. Finally, pens are very low cost, therefore it's a very cost-effective option. In hospital, seminar can also be held for doctors in order to encourage a good prescribing habits. This will allow patients to choose between branded and generic. For example, by writing esomeprazole, or Nexium plus generic substitution is allowed unless otherwise specified, the patients can choose Esoma. Instead, if only Nexium is written, the patient cannot choose Esoma. Finally, leaflets and social medias can be used to target the patients in order to increase the diagnostic rate of GERD and peptic ulcers. For example, by targeting those with risk factors such as drinking and smoking. We can also educate them to recognize the symptoms, know the severe consequences of the delay in diagnosis, such as the esophagitis and the esophageal cancer.
So let's talk about the regulatory issues. Under the Pharmacy and Poisons regulations, pharmaceutical products must be registered with the Pharmacy and Poison Board before selling, offering for sale, or distributing. There are some documents required by the Department of Health in order to have a proper registration of our products. We need to submit the soft copy of the business registration certificate of our company. Also, a soft copy and certified true copy of our manufacturer's license are needed as well. Besides, our authorized person needs to give his personal information, such as telephone number, fax number, and the contents of the submission dossier to the Department of Health. The soft copy and certified true copy of GMP certificate of our company and also evidence showing that we have complied with the PEC's GMP standards should be submitted. A soft copy and certified true copy of the free sale certificate of our product is also needed. For the information related to our product, a set of sample sales pack of our products should be provided, and it should fulfill the labeling requirements, which are listed as follows. The first requirement is the name of the product, which in this case is Esoma, and the second requirement is the name and quantity of the API, and in this case is as omeprazole and 40 mg. And our name and address should be stated as well, which is listed here. The batch number and expiry date should be listed on the pack as well. For the specific storage condition, our product needs to be stored at room temperature between 20 and 25 degrees Celsius. We are also required to submit the documents supporting the proposed indication, dosage, and route of administration, and other contents of our package insert. We can cite some reputable references such as BNF and Martindale. We also need to scan our sample sales pack in PDF format and the unit dose form of our products, clearly showing the complete contents of the prototype sales pack and its components. Then we need to provide a master formula, clearly stating the excipients we used and their quantities. We also need to provide the specifications of the products and documents showing the products comply with the pharmacopoeias listed below. For the analysis part, method of analysis should be provided for all tests stated in the specifications of finished product. Also, a certificate of analysis of a representative batch of the product issued by our company should also be provided. Lastly, stability data should be provided showing our product is stable at specific temperature and humidity. For the registration steps, firstly, we need to upload the documents required to the online PRS 2.0 system in PDF format. For original or certified true copies of supporting documents, they need to be submitted to the address of drop office in separate mail. The application fee is 1,100, and when the application is approved, we need to pay a registration fee for the certificate of the product, and it costs $1,370. The evaluation usually takes around 12 to 18 months. And after the approval of our registration, the registration is only valid for 5 years. And after 5 years, we need to pay a renewal fee of $550 for another 5 years. So this is the end of our presentation, and this is our list of references. Thank you.